Hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is Post-Apocalypse World, Episode 2, which correlates directly with Roll20 presents, you guessed it, Apocalypse World, Episode 2. So, this is the hour-ish long, however long it takes, post-show where I sit down and talk about what happened in the last episode. I talk about GM stuff, and I'm going to reveal to you the mysterious mysteries of what I do when I'm GMing this game, both on screen. So we'll look at some of the stuff that you guys all get as an audience, Avison's view, so you can see her character sheet and the rolls that she makes and the map stuff that we all share, but you don't get to see the background stuff until now. So there's that. Today I want to talk about maps. I want to adjust and update my fronts, which if you tuned into the last episode, you'll remember are the way that as a GM, an MC of Apocalypse World, it's the way that you manage the kind of ongoing stuff in the world, because it's hugely important to Apocalypse World specifically, but to, in my mind, all role-playing games ever, that you maintain a consistent universe, and the fronts allow you to do that. So that if I go to Mercer's Enclave and say, I don't know, oh yeah, before I get to this, spoiler warning. There's no shield against spoilers here. You're all exposed directly to the spoilery warp. So I'm going to be talking about stuff that happened in the episodes. It's not such a big deal. Like, if you're here, it's because you want to know all the secrets. If you're not up to date on the episodes, honestly, like, there hasn't been any big, like, OMG reveals yet. So it's fine. And you'll notice, especially if you watch the last episode, the game has taken on a bit of a, I want to say, a back narrative, sort of. Like, we've stepped away from the characters a little bit, and we've talked about things from a more directorial point of view. This is something that I think is really cool about Apocalypse World, and you'll notice, like, if you watch it, you can see that Andrew and John are both really experienced Apocalypse World players, and they're really helping me do my job. Like, I spent a good solid 5 or 6 minutes, and maybe let's talk about this a little bit. So, I spent a good 5 or 6 minutes saying nothing in the last episode. And if you're used to watching these games online, you'll recognize that that's kind of an aberration. Like, usually the GM is constantly just putting up information and having the players respond and constantly talking, and it can be very tiring, but it's nice to have players that and play a game where the players can jump in and ask questions and contribute. And you notice that if you watch the way Andrew plays, for example, he puts his character in danger constantly just so that everyone else can have more fun stuff to do. And you can see, like, John is really good about asking questions and helping Avison and Austin, who are less experienced Apocalypse World players, helping them get kind of into the spotlight, which is really great. I'm having a great time. So this for me is a big deal, like choosing the right players for the right game. And you've heard me talk about this if you've watched Being Everything Else or any of my other GM type conversations. It's super hugely important to pick the right, for me, cast for the game that we're playing and for the kind of stuff that we want to do. So it's been fantastic. The last 2 episodes have been great. I think it's nice to see everybody start to pick up kind of how the game's cadence works. Apocalypse World is all about the status quo being dragged into the muck and torn apart, or in our case, into the water. So let's start with what we're looking at now. This is our game map. Now, creating a game map is not just something that is useful in Apocalypse World. It's mandated basically by the rules. One of the GM's mandates is to create as many maps as you can. And so we're starting with this map, and we're going to be adding in smaller maps as we get. Like, I'd love to see a map of what Gritch's cache looks like, or a map of the area, down here, in this little 2 or 3 kilometer zone. But we're going to start with, this is functionally our world map. We added a scale to it. You can do that in Roll20 and check it using the ruler tool. Normally, you'll see this get used by games like Pathfinder, where you're measuring, like, if I'm standing here and I want to fireball Mercer's Enclave, how many feet is that away? But Roll20 allows you on the page level to set the scale. So for each unit, how long is that in real time or real space? So I set the scale to kilometers, and now you can see that to get from the safe place to Mercer's Enclave is 15K. So that's kind of a cool thing that we were able to do. Now this map is a modified version of a map that I found on the internet. And here, are you ready for your first big GM secret? Do you want to see the real map? Okay, let's take a look at it. So in my page toolbar, I've got a whole bunch of different pages that I use. The players really only ever see these base screen and archipelago pages. That's where you can see the little label here. I can move them back and forth. But what I get to see is all this other fun crap. And this, dun, da, 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 this is the map I originally started with. So I grabbed this map from the internet. I can't remember where I found it. Google image search. I'll try to find the attribution for it before the next episode so we can talk a little bit about it, but I wanted to keep it a secret so nobody else could see it. So this map is, and as soon as we decided Pacific Northwest, I was like, okay, obviously the game has to be set in a sunken version of Vancouver. And I remember seeing this map on the internet months and months ago about, like, what would happen if Vancouver flooded. So you can see that here's the downtown area of Vancouver. Here's areas where Vancouver and environs have some mountainous area, and so we can see that what survived, boop, into our apocalypse is here. So there's still North Vancouver up here, and the UBC endowment lands here, and all that stuff available. But this is all city, which is why Mercer's Enclave is the top of a building. And I've been able to kind of correlate some stuff. And for me, the thing that I kind of wanted to do was put it in my hometown so that every day when I go out there and I walk around and look at things, I can think, hey, what would this look like under several kilometers of water? How might this look? And I'm familiar enough with the terrain that I can use that to kind of mess with my barfing forth apocalyptica, right? This is my creating an idea of the world, and it's so much easier if you're acting on a real place. So as a GM, you can do that sort of literally the way that that I did right here, saying, okay, here's the map, we're going to correlate stuff specifically, or you can draw inspiration from either a literal place that you're in constantly or a fictional place by absorbing the media around it. So, I talk about this in GMing a lot, where, everything that you do and all the stuff that you see, the music you listen to, the movies and TV shows that you watch, they end up kind of worming their way into your brain and becoming part of the bank that you withdraw from when you want to be creative. So I made it easy on myself, and we made this map. So with the help of my partner Emily, who is much better at Photoshop than I am, we took out all of the details, cut out all the words, just kept the land and the sort of scratchy background roads, took out all the terminology to keep it secret, keep it safe, and throw it up on the map, so I can use it. So some other stuff that we did with the map. This map I'm probably never gonna do anything with, but if we look at my archipelago map, I've added some of these red circles. It was so funny playing the game and I wasn't able to respond at the time because I'm running a game, but I could see chat. I could see chat being like, what are those red circles? Somebody tell me what the red circles are. Oh my god, red circles, what the fuck? So the red circles on the map are areas, we talked about it a little bit in the opening bit of the game, where these are zones, basically. And if you're familiar with Stalker or Roadside Picnic, which Stalker is based on, either the book or the movie or the video games, these are zones, and they're super weird. So these are places where, and again, if you watched if you watch the episode, you know, like, this zone, time does not operate the way you might expect. In other zones, maybe there's strange wildlife, or maybe gravity doesn't function the same way, or maybe that's a zone where if you go in, you just get a horrible disease. Like, nobody understands necessarily what these zones do. They move around, they change shape. Sometimes you can raid them for weird stuff, like Gritch does to get his drugs. But once you go in, who knows what's going to happen when you come back out. So the zones, I've added these. And, you know, because they're objects on top of my map, I have the freedom to do things like, uh-oh, Mercer, your zone's getting bigger. Then I can move the zones around. And I'm thinking that I'll probably adjust these slightly between every session. So just a little bit, nudge them around. We'll see if the characters notice, because the players have access to this map. Also, we added in some areas here. So I'm using just little white dots to indicate locations. What I'll probably do is start to color code these. So like PC friendly ones will have green, enemy ones might have red. You know, we'll talk about that. I might use some different shapes, that kind of stuff. And I've also added in this area. So we talked about a new faction, a new group of people in our world called the Fisher clans. So the Fisher clans, they are a group of families who basically control the water in the area, and the areas where you can fish, where you can get lots of food. So these are kind of like farmers, basically. So what we've added here is just a blue circle to indicate the territory of the Fisher clan, because unlike Mercer or Jericho, you know, they don't have a specific building or location where they always live. The Fisher clan waters are here. They're, you know, where the fish live, and we might move them around depending on that. But they're sort of nomadic. So if the players go here, they're going to have to look around to find the fishers. Maybe they have like a small fleet of shipping or fishing boats, ships that they use to gather up the food. So this map is going to evolve over time. You know, we're going to see, I guarantee by the end of it, there's going to be tons more of these little dots. We're going to have different zones. We're going to have, you know, trade routes probably added to it. I'd love to see Frankie add, you know, how do we get from one to the other, and what's our path around these things. But the map will evolve over time, and we'll have additional maps. I know that both Andrew and John are pretty into doing their own maps for the game, so I'm hoping they're going to be able to do that for us. So let's go take a look at what's changed since the last episode, shall we? I've added a new item here, and I'm going to update this basically every week. Let's zoom out, and I want to still talking about maps, but this is a map of a different kind. This is a relationship map. And I love these. I love relationship maps. Can we see this decently well? My head's not too much in the way. I'm sorry, nothing. Anyway, so the relationship map is a space where I can keep track of how one character relates to another and how all of the PCs and NPCs are connected. This really, for me, is about creating the best way to put it, I guess, is creating those PC, NPC, PC triangles. And you'll notice I'm not doing a great job yet. I got a lot of NPC triangulation, but we don't have much of that yet. So, you know, we've got our characters. We've got Smith July, we've got Gritch, Frankie, and Navarre. And they're all, you know, look at that. Like, they're all tightly connected to each other. And that helps me understand kind of what their deal is. But we've also got, you know, our NPCs. Like, look at how connected Mercer is. Makes sense, right? Because Mercer is a boss of an enclave. So, you know, she's got... I'm loath to use present tense. She will have... Time's a little confusing when it comes to this guy. Twice was working for Mercer. Was looking for Gritch. We'll have to change twice around a little bit. We've got Honeytree. I originally had another NPC here. I had Domino, but Domino got shot in the face and died as soon as we saw them. So no Domino. We added Jericho, who I know has a deal of some kind with Mercer because, look at our map. Here's Jericho. And then there's Mercer. They're pretty close together. And I've still got Exit, I've got Tau, I've got Monk, all the characters from before. We learned a little bit more about Nothing, but we're still not quite sure how they relate. And so what I'm going to do to continue building these relationship maps is add lines between NPCs and PCs, because they're starting to get a little bit more familiar. So like Tau and Frankie might have a relationship now, or Tau and Smith July definitely do, because they had that moment alone. Tau and Gritch. So I'm going to probably move Tau from down here to up here somewhere where we can see how they relate. And once we go to see Jericho, we're going to figure out how they relate to the PCs. Because, one thing that I wanted to stress was that we're jumping into a world that has existed for a long time. These PCs, just because we don't know where the PCs fit into the map doesn't mean they don't already fit, right? Mercer and Frankie have known each other a long time. Gritch, I added him as an attachment to Jesus Fisher because Gritch introduced Jesus, right? Gritch was like, well, what about Jesus? So I was like, okay, obviously Jesus Fisher, and that's a connection. So as the game goes on, just like the Archipelago map is going to evolve, so too will my relationship map. And the reason, and this is a question that I get sometimes about these maps, is like the reason why I use a sort of flowchart like this is so that for me, I'm a very visual person. I look at each individual item in the map and say, okay, who is this person connected to, so that I can say, what do they want? How do they affect the ongoing situation? Like Honeytree, you notice Honeytree works with Twice, but doesn't work directly with Mercer. So there's an implication of power there, and Honeytree is separated on their own. So if I see a sort of empty node like this, I'm going to want to connect it to other things. So who else does Honeytree know? Right? Does Honeytree have a relationship with Exit? Because Exit is part of Enclave security. Now, why isn't Twice related to Exit? How are they related? So all of this stuff is, for me, a way of saying, okay, look at a person and how are they connected to all the other people around them, and is this still true? And you'll notice in this map, I have a ton of question marks, right? How are Mercer and Jesus Fisher related? Monk and Tau, what's their relationship? I need to draw a line between Monk and Exit, and that's going to be some question marks too. So, all this stuff, for me, like I designed this flowchart outside of Roll20 because while Roll20 is great at doing, and this is something that I've talked to the team about, I use a special piece of software called OmniGraffle to build these. It's flowcharting software. It's specifically engineered for this stuff, but I've been talking to the folks at Roll20 because I would love to see this kind of mapping get moved into Roll20, because if I could edit this here, that'd be totally awesome. But it's a lot of work, right? It's a very custom, specific piece of software. So anyway, I'm going to update this every week. Treat it like I'll treat it like a graphic that I would update from the internet, like a Photoshop document or whatever. I'll pull in a new version and update it every week. It's really just for me to refer to. So yeah, this will get updated more, just like the regular map, and we're going to fill in all of these question marks as we go, because a big part of how Apocalypse World is run is not answering questions about the world exactly, but asking them and allowing play to answer them for you. So as you can see, like, it's almost as many questions as we have connections that we know about. So, how do we handle all of those? How do we manage those questions? How do I organize all these NPCs in a way that isn't just like a big red and black grid with arrows and chaos? Well, this is how. So I've got a set of fronts, and fronts are the technology that Apocalypse World uses to manage this stuff. So you'll notice if you were watching the last time, I had 3 fronts. I had the home front, I I had fear, and I had decay. Each front is organized by something that it represents, the scarcity that it represents. So I've added in hunger, because we started talking about food supply last time, and we talked about the Fisher clan, so I wanted to add them and put them in. So let's go ahead, and I have some more NPCs to add to this. Let's start with Jericho, who's a former raider. We learned about Jericho right at the very end, and he is going to fit nicely into our fear front. So let me just zoom in a little so y'all can see what we're doing. And so you'll remember fear, the fear front. We have Mercer. We know that Mercer is a warlord who wants to control. And in the countdown, Mercer's attempts to retain control, because Mercer's like basically was shot and is dying. So, yeah. So this is about Mercer's desperation to survive, right? Mercer really wants just to prove that she is still in control. And so she's done one of these things already, right? So we're going to use these little X's to indicate which ones have been done, because I can't do a paint fill necessarily. Let's make this slightly bigger. There we go. All right. So she did this. One of my countdown clocks has started to advance. So here's the thing. In this front, because Mercer has sent hunters for Gritch, Mercer's going to attack a smaller hold. So either I need to invent one, or I need to pick, hey, who's nearby? Well, she could go after the Fisher clan, which might be a terrible idea, or she's going to attack Jericho, because that's on the fronts. I got to stay true to my prep. So I'll have to decide during the session, and I'm going to leave myself room to decide that. Decide during the session how that progresses, right? And then what happens after she attacks a hold? Well, I guess that'll be up to the game. Now, what I'm thinking is that win or lose, Mercer is still dying, and Mercer hasn't gotten any help, and nobody special has gone to help. I think that there's maybe only one person in the whole hold who might be able to help Mercer now, and it's probably nothing. So, yeah. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up I've decided on the third countdown for this one. So Mercer picks a successor, because now in her fear that the whole place is going to come down and that her legacy will be lost, she's going to need to pick someone to succeed her. Now, depending on the Tau situation, might be her, might not. We don't really know too much about Tau and Mercer's relationship. We've had the Maelstrom offer some weirdness for us. But yeah. And actually, while I'm thinking on this, I've got an idea for her next. So the idea when we're making these countdown clocks is that the players could step in and they could say, have an effect on this countdown where it might get better before 9 o'clock. So if they step in between the attack and the successor, if they step in now and apologize before she attacks a smaller hold, they could still make this kind of fall back and not lead toward the dark future. But after 9 o'clock, it's just about mitigation. So I'm just going to put a nice general one for 9 to 10. Violence intensifies. So maybe this is where, depending on the situation, Mercer declares martial law, right? Maybe she builds an army. Maybe, depending on how the attack went, she has absorbed Jericho's raiders, and now she's the big military leader in the area. I can see Mercer's desperation for control and desperation for legacy to be, her fear to be about lashing out violently, trying to make an impact on the world. So there we go. So we've got this set up. I'll figure out the rest of the countdown clock as we go. I don't have to do that right now, but we know that the next thing to have happen for Mercer will be that she's going to attack a smaller hold. Depending on how long the players take, depending on what actions they take, this will happen sooner or later, or off-screen or on-screen, depending. So our second threat, and I think we're ready to update this one a little bit, is Tau. And Tau is Mercer's twin sister. We know, because we've been tuning into the GM show like good human beings that want to know all the background stuff, that Mercer is a grotesque. She's a disease vector. She wants intimate or anonymous contact with people. And, yep, we don't know the details of her disease yet. We don't know why she's sick or how she's sick, but we know she's sick enough, and this is something that the players were trying to figure out. We know that she's sick enough that Monk and Exit got rid of her. They were like, take her away, and she's a disease, she's dangerous, but they didn't tell the players that. So the players are in this situation where the Maelstrom knows, other NPCs know, but they don't know what they're supposed to be, why they're taking Tao away. You'll notice, though, that at the end of the episode, Gritch was starting to figure it out. Gritch was like, we can't, because of the Maelstrom vision, Gritch was like, we can't take Tao to the Fisher clans because that's bad. That's the food supply. So we'll talk about how those connect in a minute. But what I do want to do is I want to add in some countdowns for Tao. So Tao is taken to a hold. So this one will be easy. This is the first countdown. Tao is exposed to a group of other people, right? She's taken away. She's exposed to, those people are exposed to her disease. I think the second thing to have happen is people start getting sick, and we haven't again defined whether this is a mental illness, a Maelstrom illness. Oh yeah, sorry, my face is blocking the clock. There we go. Thanks, Leah. Okay, cool. So anyway, Tao's taken to a hold. People start getting sick. I'm going to add maybe people start dying. Now, fatalities doesn't have to... I'm putting fatalities with a question mark because maybe this doesn't mean... yeah, maybe this doesn't mean the people literally just die. Maybe it means something very bad happens to a bunch of people because of her. And then once that happens, this is going to trigger the next one. Tao goes home. So Tao goes back to Mercer's hold. So can you imagine what might happen if these things happen around the same time, or if this one happens faster? So what we're seeing is these clocks don't operate, you know, at the same speed. So what might happen is Tao might get taken to the hold, people might get sick, there might be massive fatalities, Tao might sneak away right between attacking and the successor. So Tao might come home, Mercer might be like, yay, my sister's home, I'm dying. You're in charge now, Tao. Which we know would be messy and gross and bad. But it might happen that she picks a different successor, then Tao goes home, and that would be a whole other thing. So, you know, these things will tick along as they go, and I'll update them. Now, I don't know. I'm gonna grab. You know, I'm gonna add in a move here. I don't know what the move I want to be, but I do know the trigger. So. So I've got the first idea of a move. I know that if anybody has intimate contact, and I'm thinking right now probably like intimate physical contact, like the kind that might give you like a disease, like a fluid contact, that then you have to roll. So if any of the players have sex with Tao or some other kind of weird intimate contact, I was thinking about this move, but I wasn't sure about it until that moment where Gritch wanted to read Tao. I think that's a vector too. I think this is maybe a psychic and a physical disease. Maybe they're paired. So I want to have this move ready for when the deep brain scan happens for Tao. So I'm going to need to brainstorm it between now and Thursday. I'm not totally certain, but basically I'm thinking that like on a 10 plus, maybe you learn something about the disease, but don't get it yourself. On a 7 to 9, you get the disease, but it's not bad for you in any way. Like you're a carrier, like Tao. Tao's probably not dying of the disease. And then on a miss, the disease starts to infect you. Begin a countdown clock to your doom, right? You get your own countdown clock on your sheet, and you start to get sick and die. Or whatever. You get absorbed by the maelstrom, or whatever the end result of this is. Cool. So you can see these starting to build up and accumulate over time. Yeah, nice. Okay, so one other thing that I wanted to add to fear, and we had just generic raiders. I knew raiders existed, so I'm going to move them down. We know they exist. They may or may not be fear related. I'll probably end up moving them to another front, but what we do have is a brand new front called Jericho. So Jericho is... Oh, and you know what? I'm going to move somebody. Trista made a good point. Let's go back to the home front. Go away, Chrome. I know I'm in full screen. Okay. I'm going to move an NPC because exit, you, my friend, belong to Tao now, because they have definitely had sex. Cool. I'm also going to move twice into Mercer. Into Mercer's section. There we go. All right, cool. So exit belongs to Tao's front now. Twice we've officially added to Mercer's front. You notice I called him a time-addled knife man. I do not know what happened to Twice yet. He vanished. Him and Honeytree. Honeytree, who, if you were watching and paying attention, Honeytree is like an old man now. They're both very damaged, and we'll come back to them eventually. But right now they're off screen, and we'll figure them out later. They're off screen badness. Okay, so where were we? Jericho. So Jericho is a new front, and it represents Jericho and his little army he's building to protect himself. The way we describe Jericho in play is that Jericho's kind of like an old man at the end of his prime. Like he used to be a raider, and the raiders are all about like violence and combat, and he's not really capable of doing that anymore. So he's left, built his own fortress, basically Jericho's Beach, and is set up to basically he's setting up a armored coffin for himself, right? He's surrounding himself with violent men and women and wants to protect himself from his own impending doom, his own death by old age. So he's going to be a warlord, but instead of a dictator, I'm going to make him a collector, I think. Yeah. He's trying to collect violent people. Jericho, I can see already, Jericho's storyline and Navare's narrative are gonna come to a head. And we already talked about how Jericho has been trying to like lure Navare to come fight, because I think that Navare is like the toughest badass in the whole area, right? Everybody knows that. So we're starting to see how they might be connected. So that means if you're a collector, Jericho, your impulse is to own. Makes sense, right? Wants to own all the violent badasses. I can't wait to see the scene that includes Jericho, Smith July, and Navare. I think it's going to be hot. It's going to be a good one. So right now, I don't have a lot of idea for... you know what? I have one idea for the countdown, and we're gonna go with tying this directly to an NPC or to a PC, and I'm gonna say Jericho offers Navare a job, and then depending on if it gets turned down, which I think it's going to be because Navare is pretty loyal to the crew. That he doesn't like being told no. So he's going to respond violently and try to threaten Navare. And then, after that, depending on how that goes, we're going to say... So Jericho's going to send attackers after the Vixen directly. So I can see this escalation being like, hey, you should come work for me. Then you shouldn't have said no, I'm going to make a threat. I'm going to make some kind of verbal threat or like do something bad. Then straight up, like, if I can't have you, nobody can. We're going to try and attack the Vixen. Yeah, cool. What I'm really interested in seeing about Jericho is whether Jericho stays very focused on a particular NPC or how that spreads out. And I can see that triangle forming between Jericho and Smith, July, and Navari. Because I think Jericho's impulse isn't just to own violent people, it's to own... I mean, you want pretty things around you when you die, right? Like, I imagine him as like an Egyptian pharaoh, right? And he's like, nope, grave goods, you all have to join me. I want to be surrounded by great things when I die. I want to be... he wants to go out with the most toys. So... there's Jericho. Now, Jericho is going to be collectively like tied to the Raiders because the Raiders are where he came from. So he might call them there. There might be some kind of connection. So let's detail the Raiders a little bit more. I'm going to make them. Let's see here. What are my options? So the Raiders, I could make them brutes, I think. And I'm definitely gonna make them brutes. So they are brutes, and the Raiders are a hunting pack. Ugh. There we go. And a hunting pack's impulse is to... let's see, hunting pack's impulse to victimize anyone vulnerable. Cool. And I imagine these guys are like ocean raiders, so they probably live like down here somewhere, or like, you know, off in this direction. Maybe in like the Swassen area. Maybe they own the ferry terminal. I am gonna make a note of that because that sounds awesome. Maybe they're from as far away as Vancouver Island. Yeah, or like Saanich, that kind of stuff. They're like pirates and they like raid the inland. Cool. Having ideas. All right, let's make that a note here. So for anyone who's asking, I know y'all can't see the rule book. Everything that I'm doing is like the warlord kind, the impulse, the rules that manage all this, the dark future and agenda, that's coming directly from Apocalypse World. There's a chapter in the rulebook called Fronts that is helping me detail all of this. So yeah, definitely straight from the game. I'm not making this stuff up myself. I mean, I'm making it up, but the framework is there. So these are Alright, so we'll make a little description there, and we'll come back to them. We don't know the names of any of them. We don't know anything about them. Right now they're like a nameless threat. They're like the Ravagers from the sea, but we'll come back when we get some real names for these jerks. We know that Jericho was one of them. And actually I should make a note of that too. Excellent. Thanks for tolerating all my clicking. So, cool. Look at how much more full this is. We got a little, like, this action. We know that when they go to see Jericho, this is going to tick off, and we're going to... I mean, hell, maybe all three of these will happen next session. Or maybe I'm going to be totally thrown off, and we're going to have to redesign these because Navari's going to be like, yeah, sure. I'll stay here. No problem. There's going to be some loyalty moments there. Between Navari and Jericho. So cool. All right. I'm gonna jump over to my next front, which is decay. So you remember this one? We detailed a little bit of this. So here's some stuff that's happening. You'll notice a parallel. So this is I'll review the front. So this is Nothing and Nothing's cult, and they're the ones we learned a little bit about them on screen now. The players have learned about Nothing. Nothing believes in nothing. Lebowski. He and his cult believe in memory and getting rid of them. Right, like they believe that, and we talked a little bit about this as sort of a desperation measure when something terrible is happening to people. Sometimes they try to make it into a good thing. You know, like when your life is suffering, maybe you invent a religion that says suffering is good for you. Then you can feel better. You can be like, well, God wanted us to suffer. Thank you, God. Thank you for this suffering. Instead of just being like, suffering blows. I hate it. Why does this happen to me? So what Nothing and the Clarity Cult has done is they're like, we keep forgetting stuff. Maybe forgetting is awesome. So I've been doing a little research about how players might be affected by this, and about like for these characters how if the players undergo the ritual, that might affect them. I also was looking up a bunch of stuff about how memory loss works, so that's kind of cool. Did you know that drinking salt water can cause massive dehydration, which can cause memory damage? Did you know that? Now I do. Cool. So here's the thing. I want to add in, because we understand some things better. You'll notice Nothing is made leader of the Enclave. This is a direct tie-in to Tau and to Mercer, right? Like if Mercer picks a successor, shit, maybe it's Nothing. I also want to notice. I want you to notice that I changed the move. So Johnstone Metzger, who has been, he's part of the same group that we play tested Apocalypse World with Andrew, one of my players. Johnstone's an awesome game designer. He's designed stuff for Dungeon World. He did the Metamorphica, which, as you know, is one of my favorite system neutral supplements. Anyway, he helped me redesign this custom move. And so now, if you undergo the cult ritual, on a 10+, you either choose a memory to forget, or you can read the whole cult as if it were a person right now. On a 7 and 9, you don't forget anything significant, or you don't get sick. Getting sick means you suffer 2 harm unless you can get medicine from the cult. And then on a miss, both bad things happen to you. So this way, I can kind of lure the players in, because one of my questions was, will a PC join the Clarity Cult? Smith July is going to be one. I'm going to aim this front right at Austin's character, because he's the most, to me, in my mind, the most fragile about their memories. So what's probably going to happen, what I think I'm going to lead towards, is helping Smith July remember bad things. Maybe it'll be Gritch's fault. But Smith July eventually might want to forget murdering his brother. Right? You can go to the cult. You got something you don't want to remember? Somebody assault you? Did all your kids drown? Did your dog die? Do you feel sad? Do you hate your life? Join the Clarity Cult. We will help you forget. Clean slate, everybody. If nobody remembers anything, it's like the parallel to like Tyler Durden in Fight Club, right? If we blow up all the credit card companies, no one has debt. We all start over. So that's the thing. Now we also know that Nothing wants to get his hands on Tau. There's a relation between Tau and Nothing. So what I want to do is I'm going to add in a new. Let's make these a little smaller. Buy myself some room. I'm going to add in a new countdown for this one. So before Nothing is made leader of the Enclave, and we're going to add in there we go. Cool, so now we've got the first 4 countdowns for them. And actually, I think they've already done this, right? We kind of saw them. Mercer's out, so Mercer can't really fight them. So I'm gonna jump back to my fear. I'm gonna grab that little X, and we're gonna put our stamp on the decay front. Now, Nothing might be made leader of the Enclave directly if we get to it. So it might be like, and that's actually a good question. I'm gonna Primarch ask this, and I should make a note because I need to figure this out. What's so special about Tau? I'm intentionally leaving it sort of unknown so that I don't have to decide now, because maybe one of the players will come up with a great idea. Maybe I'll be inspired in the moment. Anyway, so they've infiltrated Mercer's enclave. What'll happen next is worship multiplies dramatically. Then they're going to get their hands on Tau. And if things just keep going that way, nothing will be made leader of the enclave. Now you'll notice I didn't set any of these three things, like nothing being made leader, Mercer declaring a successor, and Tau going home. They're all moving kind of in the same direction, but none of them are at cross purposes. So I don't have to worry about racing to one. Like I didn't say Tau becomes leader of the enclave, I think. Let me make sure I'm saying this right. Yeah, Tau goes home. That's all that matters. Now, for these fronts, the thing to remember when you're looking at them is they can jump ahead. I don't have to go one to the other. So if a player, and this is where you see like the PCs being allowed to break the rules. It's just like in Stars Without Number. If the players, personally destroy a faction, that faction doesn't exist anymore. Just like in Apocalypse World, if someone shoots Tau in the face, all of this stuff is forfeit, and I have to redesign it, which is awesome. That's what we want. There's no status quo in our universe. Anything can change, and everything will. It might work in this order, it might not. So independent of that, and it's this one. Nihilistic Fox in chat asked, why would Mercer choose Tau's successor? So they're twins. They get along, like they care about each other. Tau is bereft at being separated from his sister. Mercer's going to be so pissed when she finds out Tau's gone. And I mean, despite the fact that it's the apocalypse, people still like love each other. So anyway, we'll see how all of this stuff moves along. I want them to be connected. I want the sickness. I want Tau. I want nothing and Mercer to all be connected, but not completely directly attached to one another. And plus, memory is a thing, too. People might forget these things, and I might have to adjust them. We also don't know how nothing is affected, and we don't know how Tau is affected by the memory sickness, the forgetting sickness. They might not be. Maybe nothing remembers everything. Maybe he's a hypocrite, right? Maybe he's like, I want everyone to forget so that I'm the only one that remembers. I mean, God, can you, like, just for half a second, like, think about this. Like, how disgusting would a cult leader who's capable of making his followers forget anything he said or did? Like, how gross would that be? He can do whatever he wants. Like, yep, I'm taking all of your belongings. Oh, you forgot. No, these are mine. I own all of these. That's my boat and my house. We had to, like, forcefully hold you down and feed you, put you through the ritual? Well, guess what? You forgot. It went great. I remember. Maybe nothing carries the burden of memory for his flock. I'm gonna copy this. God, you're gross. Nothing. Gross individual. All right, so let's add that in. So blech, grody. Yeah, and also another question. What does nothing know that nobody else does? Like, why start this cult, right? What's his deal? I mean, I think he's really gross right now, but maybe he's like the fucking savior messiah. Maybe he's gonna fix everything. I don't know. It doesn't look like it. He's certainly a power-hungry dude, and they want to victimize and incorporate, but I mean, we'll see. I think he knows something. It's not does he know something, it's what does he know. That's definitely a thing. Okay, cool. So we're good, I think, right now for decay. So let's jump over to our last new front that I added, which we call the food supply. There are three different threats in the food supply, and I've added them just to illustrate some specific stuff. So let's take a look at them one at a time. Go away, Windows. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look here. So I've added the Fisher clans. The Fisher clans are brutes. They're a specific type of brutes called family. And their job, their impulse is to close ranks and to protect their own. So I'm going to add to their list. We're going to jump back to the home front. I can take exit and twice out of here. I'm going to add in Jesus Fisher. Now, I'll let you in on kind of my plans for the fishers. So the Fisher clan, these folks, I've set them up in my head, and this is totally going to change. I've set them up as kind of like the appearing good farmers. Like if they had an alignment in D&D, they would be like neutral good probably. Their job is to protect the bountiful water, to fish for fish, and then trade that fish to other people. They have the equipment, they have the skills, and that's what they do. They feed people. I think they think of themselves as good people, but they are very insular. They care a lot about each other more than everybody else. That's why, like, it's a grave insult to call a fisher by their first name. I also decided that somewhere along the line, in attempting to like reinstall their family structure, someone got a hold of a Bible, or maybe like a book of Bible names, and they're just all named after people in the Bible, but without any context. So, like, sure, there's going to be, like, a Jesus Fisher and, like, an Aaron and a Jonah and a Grace Fisher, but there's probably also going to be a Satan Fisher, like an Abaddon Fisher, a Lucifer Fisher, a Gehenna Fisher, like, all the bad stuff, an Apocalypse Fisher or whatever. So there'll be all these names out of context. They're not religious. They don't know anything about Christianity or the Bible, but they're like, hey, these are good names. And maybe they saw Fisher in there, and they're like, "Oh, fish." There's an analogy, Jesus. Yeah, no, this makes sense because we fish. But it's not. They're not. They're a non-religious like group. I also was thinking that they have sort of a caste system where there's like, if you are born from two fishers, then you're better off than someone who's born to a fisher and an outsider, and you become a fisher when you marry in, but you're never as good as the other fishers, right? So. The ultimate fisher is going to be someone who can trace both their matrilineal and patrilineal line through fishers as far as they can go. And I think that the fisher clans are important because, and this is a thing that I want to add as a question. The Fisher clan family record is a log of how the Fisher line, right? So the Fishers, again, here's the thing. Like, let's talk about. Yeah, okay. So that's the thing. There's a question. They're gross. They marry their own kids. There's a marriage ceremony. The family tie is super important to them. They keep a written record where they say, you know, Jesus Fisher, son of Adlai Fisher, son of Satan Fisher, son of Ava Fisher. You know, and they track the line so that everybody knows who they're related to all the time. Now they're still gonna forget because, you know, the disease affects everybody, but they write it down. They've got a record. So that the heritage tracing there is to prove who you are. They always have a place. Now I might forget, if I'm Jesus Fisher, I might forget how all my friends are. I might not remember my own family, but we have the record. But the irony is they don't use the record to prevent incest. They encourage it, which is gross. So there we go. Apocalypse World. So the Fisher clans are in there. I don't know about their countdown yet, but it's going to involve the family record, I think. Maybe somebody getting a hold of it. And you can see already how the Fisher clans and the Clarity Cult are going to butt heads. So that's a thing. I've added the Bountiful Water, which is the area that the Fisher clans fish. Now, Bountiful Water is a landscape, but it's a mirage. Its goal is to entice and betray. So everybody thinks that the Bountiful Water will just always have fish forever and it'll always be healthy, but it won't. Definitely won't. So we'll talk about how that might build up as we get involved. This is tied directly to the Fishers. If the Fishers ever get killed or ousted and someone else takes over, Bountiful Water is still a front and still moves on its own. I'm actually going to add another question here. Will one of the PCs become a Fisher? Is that a thing? Also... What does the record say about the PCs? Because it's got some secrets. Some real secrets. Cool. All right. And then lastly, and the last threat that I added to the hunger front, because this is all about food supply, famine, was malnutrition. Somebody, I think either on Twitter or the subreddit, the Roll20 subreddit, mentioned that sure, like food would be available. We've described it as being there's lots of fish and wildlife, but what about somebody mentioned they specifically, and this is a thing that stuck in my head. Somebody else's apocalyptica bleeding into mine. What about like vitamin C? And they mentioned people gathering pine needles to make like tea. Because obviously you can't grow oranges in this shithole universe. So I called it enough meat, not enough else. And it's an affliction, it's a condition, it's malnourishment, and its impulse is to expose people to danger. So what happens, then these three are maybe more than the rest, they're unclear, and this is okay for fronts. You just build the threats and you fill them in as you go. But like, how is this related to the Fisher clans? This threat will get worse if something happens to the Fishers, and that destabilizes. If people forget that they need vitamin C, that might be a thing. This just represents the fact that this is an untenable position, that they can't just eat fish forever. It may just go away. They might solve this problem, but they might not. It might get worse, right? So there's a thing. Oh, that's actually another really good point. So Alex the Grin in chat just mentioned that Navarre is a type of Bible, and that maybe Navarre is already a fisher. So has anyone forgotten that they're a fisher? It's genius, right? It's brilliant. Because as a GM, I have the ability in this game to kind of like dick around with how these things work. And I can say, like, actually, guess what? You forgot. You're a fisher. You go home. There's your husband or your wife, right? There's your kids. You forgot. You're not allowed back here. Wow. Yeah, cool. I like it. Thank you. I'm going to use that. Again, like, it's good to have an idea about what could happen, but not to make it a question, right? I'm going to ask Navarre. I'm not going to tell Avacyn, hey, you're a fisher. What I'll probably do is, did you forget that you're a fisher? And then Avacyn can say, no, hopefully no, but whatever. Because, I mean, I don't want to take away her agency as a player, but I love the idea of dangling this hook. And I'm learning what hooks to dangle in front of what players. If I say to Andrew, hey, do you want to do a cool thing in exchange for getting yourself hit with an axe? He'll probably do it. So I'm learning about the characters. So what we've got ahead of us here now is, you can see, like, this game, people always ask me when I run games, like, how much time do you spend prepping? This is it. That was my prep. I did it. There's really only an hour a week of really, like, solid, forced, like, sit down and think about it prep, where I, like, read all my notes. But I'm doing prep constantly. I'm thinking about, like, what... I'm culminating Apocalyptica, right? Like, the thing in the game about slowing time and the rope coming apart, that, for me, was something I thought about, like, how time bent, and, like, the rope and the blood and the boat frozen in the water. That all kind of came to me over time. I thought about it. So I've added all of this in. We are ready for the next episode, and I think that's it. So again, thank you. Thanks for coming. I love having folks around to tune in to the secret stuff. I also really like it when you give me ideas so I can steal them for the show. Primarch, Alex particularly, thanks for your help today. Yeah, hopefully you'll be able to tune in 11 a.m. Right here at twitch.tv/Roll20app. 11 a.m. Thursdays every week. That's how it goes. We're going to play. So you'll get to see my terrible fronts approach the PCs then. And I'm going to do this every Friday as a follow-up. Same time, 11 a.m. Thanks for coming. Don't drink the seawater. Stay away from nothing. We'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.